Hi, I'm Dr. Lori Schwartz Reichl. My career began in music education, where I learned the importance of a key change, a shift, in the tonal center of a piece of music, often used to inject energy or produce significance. Eventually, I realized the impact of making key changes in all areas of my life and the desire to help others do the same. Making key changes can be difficult. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I do like to pose questions for reflection and offer actionable key changes for us to attempt in both our working and living situations. Together, we can unlock our greatest potential in collaboration with those we love, serve, and lead. Let's discover how we can grow together by making key changes. I am honored to be here with Hal Elrod, father, founder, speaker, and author of The Miracle Morning, which has been translated into 37 languages, sold over 3 million copies, and is practiced daily by people in more than 100 countries. He's husband to Ursula and dad to Sophie and Houston. Along with inspiring his family and friends, he's inspired millions of people globally to wake up to their full potential. Speaking of waking up, Hal, in 1999, at the age of 20, you were fortunate to have woken up from a coma caused by a horrific car accident. Can you share with us what happened? And for our younger listeners, can you explain what a coma is also?
Absolutely. So I was working in a sales job. I started selling Cutco cutlery, kitchen knives, which never in my wildest dreams that I imagined I would be doing that, but that's where I ended up. And I gave a speech at a Cutco conference, and driving home that night, a drunk driver, a man I had never met before, got on the freeway going the wrong way, which is why we should never drink and drive, because we put our lives at risk and other people's lives at risk. And his car crashed into my car head on at 70 miles per hour. I broke 11 bones. My arm broke in half, my leg broke in half, my eye socket broke, and a bunch more. And I immediately went into a coma. And a coma is what the body does when it is when the pain that you're experiencing is so immense. Right, I could only imagine with all those broken bones how much pain I would have been feeling. Well, the brain puts the body in a coma, and it's basically puts it to sleep. So it's like I was asleep, so I didn't have to go through that horrible experience of all of that pain. And 6 days later, I woke up from a coma and was told I would never walk again. And the rest, from there, it was the mindset of, okay, I can't change that I was in a car accident. So now I have to choose, how am I going to respond? And I decided I'm going to accept my reality. I'm not going to wish it were different, because that won't change it. That'll just make me scared and unhappy. And so I decided I'm going to be at peace with my reality. And if I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life, I'll be the happiest person you've ever met in a wheelchair. But I'm not going to accept that as the only possibility. I'm going to maintain unwavering faith that I might walk again. I'm going to pray that I can walk again. I'm going to imagine it. I'm going to visualize it. And I didn't know if it was possible, but 3 weeks after my car accident and being told I would never walk again, the doctors came in with routine x-rays. And by the way, this to me is the power of the mind, the human mind, to maintain faith and not give in to what other people tell you, but to imagine that you are limitless. Anything that you imagine for your life, for yourself, is possible. And I'm living proof, because the doctors came in with x-rays and they said, Hal, I know we told you that you're never going to walk again, but somehow your body is healing, and we're going to let you take your first step today in therapy. So I went from never walk again to 3 weeks later, I took my first step. And I believe that my mind, that belief and that faith in myself and that what was possible is what made the difference. And I think for all of us, we've got to maintain unwavering faith in what's possible for us, not our limitations or not what other people tell us, but what's possible.
It's amazing. A miracle, really. It's a miracle. Yeah. So in 2005, you published your first book, Taking Life Head On, just like you did after the accident. Love the life you have so you can create the life of your dreams. How did you get into writing, and why that particular subject?
Yeah, writing never came easy to me in terms of I'm a slow writer. I never ever thought I would write a book. But after my car accident and the way that mindset that I just described, this positive mindset, accepting the worst case scenario and being at peace with it, maintaining faith in the best case scenario and moving toward it, a lot of people, including my doctors and my parents and friends, said, Hal, you should write a book. The way that you handled this tragedy, this unimaginable adversity, this challenge in your life, you could inspire other people to deal with their challenges and their difficulties, whether they were in a car accident or they were abused as a child or they were born with a disability, whatever it is, or they lost someone that they loved. The mindset of accepting life as it is and focusing on what you can control. And so it took me 6 years. I told you I'm a slow writer, Lori. It took me 6 years to write Taking Life Head On, but I felt I wasn't doing it for me. I wasn't doing it so that I could become an author. I felt like it was a calling from God, if you will. I felt like I had a responsibility to share my story and to share the mindset that enabled me to get through the most difficult time in my life with other people so that they could handle the most difficult time in their life or anywhere in between. And so that's why I decided to write Taking Life Head On and why I persevered, even though it was a really difficult 6-year process.
Wow, 6 years. So looking back as a child, would you have ever thought I could write a book?
No, and my teachers, I mean, in school, I was the class clown. I got in trouble a lot. I was never mean or mean-spirited, but I was just always talking and goofing around and getting away with stuff. And so my teachers, no, they did not have high expectations for me, for sure.
But you had a story to tell and you were willing to share it, even though it took the time. So that in itself is perseverance over the 6 years. That's fantastic. In 2012, you published The Miracle Morning, which is now a 15-book series. Is that correct? 15 books.
Roughly 15 books. Yeah, Miracle Morning for parents. Yeah, they're all behind me. Yeah, for parents and families, Miracle Morning for writers, Miracle Morning for real estate agents, Miracle Morning for college students, a lot of titles.
Cool. So what is the Miracle Morning and when exactly did you start your Miracle Morning?
So it was roughly 2008. And when I started a Miracle Morning, and to be really clear, I had never in my entire life, and I was 29 at the time, I had never in my life thought that I could become a morning person, and did not think I was a morning person. And I was going through a very difficult time in my life. In 2008, the financial economy of the United States crashed. A lot of businesses went out of business. My business was struggling, and financially, I couldn't pay the bills. I wasn't making enough money, and I got very scared. I didn't know what to do. And I spent about an hour online searching, what do I do to turn my life around? And I kept coming across morning routines. You need to have an effective morning routine so that you start your day with a positive mindset and with affirmations, which we'll talk about later. But basically, you start your day in a really positive state, and then that affects the rest of the day. If you start the day by hitting the snooze button and sleeping in and not being productive, then you're not showing up at your best for the day. But if you start the day with a positive mindset and doing some of the practices that we're going to talk about today, you start every day at your best, and then you bring the best version of yourself to everything you do, whether it's to your family, to school, to your friends, whatever it is. You're bringing the best version of yourself. But most people, their morning routine, they don't have one, or it's not effective. It's just lazy and lethargic and distracted and so on and so forth. And so I realized if I want to change my life, I first have to change myself. In other words, I have to become the person that I need to be, that's capable of, at that time, turning my financial situation around. And so I kept searching online. What do the world's most successful people do for their morning routines? And I was looking for one or two practices, and I ended up with a list of 6. The 6 most effective, proven, what are known as personal development practices, meaning you're developing yourself to be better. And I thought at first, Lori, well, like, I don't have time for all 6. Which is the best one? And after a while of contemplating that, I went, oh, what if I did all 6? What if I woke up tomorrow a little bit earlier, even though I'm not a morning person, or at least I didn't think I was, and I did all 6 of these personal development practices? That would be the ultimate morning routine. The next morning I woke up. Keep in mind, I had been like down in the dumps for 6 months and struggling financially and just not in a good place emotionally. And my very first morning, I did these 6 practices and I felt amazing. And I went, wait a minute. I've never been a morning person because I wasn't doing anything in the morning that I enjoyed doing. So I wanted to keep sleeping. But if I started every day like this, with this much energy and motivation and, positive mindset, I thought it'll only be a matter of time before I not only become a morning person, I'm already feeling like one on day one, but before I turn my life around by becoming the best version of myself. And I'll end this part of the story by saying it only took 2 months to double my income. I doubled my income and it felt so amazing. I told my wife that my morning routine felt like a miracle. And she said, it's your miracle morning. And that same reason that I wrote my first book, Taking Life Head On, because I felt I had a sense of responsibility to share the things that had changed my life with other people, and writing a book seemed like the best way to do it. That's why I decided to write The Miracle Morning, because I thought this morning routine changed my life and I wasn't a morning person. This could work for anybody, no matter what their age, and it's worked we have elementary schools, over 300 schools in America. They do the Miracle Morning every single day. So whether it's an elementary school student in, first grade, second grade, third grade, or we have people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, grandparents that do the Miracle Morning, and everywhere in between.
So I want to ask you about that very first day. Were you married at the time? Were you living with your wife? Did you have a roommate? Like, who was in the house with you when you started that miracle?
I was dating my future wife. I don't think we were even engaged yet, but we were dating, and she had seen me go from being this happy, positive person to being like depressed and scared. And, I had just bought my first house a year before. Now I couldn't pay the mortgage and the bank took it away from me. I was really big on on being debt free. And I now had $52,000 on my personal credit cards because I couldn't pay my bills. So she was desperate. She was like, sweetheart, I hate seeing you like this, but I don't know what to do to help you. So yeah, she stuck with me through that difficult time.
And so when she saw you do that, or your friends or family, close companions, what were they thinking? Like, Hal, you're not a morning person. How are you going to stick with this? What was their thought in response to you?
I remember one of my good friends from college, when I told my friend Teddy, stands out. I told Teddy what I was doing, and I was so excited. And he goes, man, I used to come over to your apartment in college at noon and have to drag you out of bed. He said, I cannot believe you're doing this Miracle Morning. And then eventually Teddy started doing it and told me how it's changing his life. And then, so, I mean, people were surprised at first, and they didn't even think I would stick with it. And, now it's been 17 years. And I do the Miracle Morning 5 to 7 days a week. And I have every week for the last 17 years. So it took a while, but they finally go, oh, I guess he's pretty serious about this. And, and then the book came out and the rest is history.
And so did your close companions join in with you immediately, or did it take some time till they believed in it?
That's the funny part. My wife, people will often ask me, how do I get my spouse? I'm doing the Miracle Morning, Hal. I read your book. I love it. It's changing my life. I can't get my spouse to do it. How do I get my kids to do it? How do you do that? I go, I don't know. Let me know when you find out. Because my wife, she's tried the Miracle Morning. I think it's like those that are closest to you, you're like, they'll tell you something. You're like, yeah. And then you've probably experienced this, Lori, where then you hear it from someone else, like a friend or and then you go back to your spouse, like, oh my gosh, this person told me this. They go, I've been telling you that for years. So now my wife gets up at 5 a.m. and goes to the gym, and it took her over a decade. And she tells me, the other day, it's so funny. She goes, yeah, I was talking to our friend, and she says she can't get anything done. And, she wakes up and it's chaotic. And I told her, why don't you wake up at 5 a.m. like I do? And I'm sitting there almost rolling my eyes, laughing. I go, sweetheart, it took me 10 years to convince you, and you're acting like she should be convinced all of a sudden, and so my wife, better late than never. And then my kids, we did the Miracle Morning together when they were younger. Now my daughter is 15 and she's like, Dad, stop pushing your Miracle Morning on me. So I hope they'll come back around. But yeah, it's getting the ones you love to do these things can be the hardest sometimes.
It sounds like Ursula needed to see the data before she jumped in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you were diagnosed with terminal cancer, a type of leukemia, in 2016, and you were given I think it was a 20 to 30% survival rate. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And how did that impact your mindset? And how did that then affect your Miracle Morning routine?
Yeah, I love that question. So yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night struggling to breathe, and went to the ER the next morning, and they drained almost 2 liters of fluid from my lung. And then a day and a half later, couldn't breathe, and they had to do it again and again and again. And I was diagnosed with this cancer, a leukemia, as you mentioned. So it's a blood cancer, and it shuts down your organs. And they gave me 1 to 2 weeks to live if I didn't start chemotherapy. I'm a very natural, holistic person, so I thought I'd rather approach this holistically and let my body heal itself. And I reached out to some of the best holistic doctors in America, and they said, you don't have the luxury of time. Your organs are already failing. You have to do chemo. It's the only chance you have of surviving. So the day that I was diagnosed and I was given a 20 to 30% chance of surviving, my wife, naturally, Ursula, was terrified. I was scared. I was concerned, but I had my car accident, and I had that reference point to go, I don't listen to what the doctors say. Like, the doctors are experts in medicine or whatever they do, but I believe in the mind-body connection, which there's a lot of science that proves that, and that our psychology affects our biology, right? The way that we think, what we choose to focus on, what we choose to believe, literally affects our cells in our body and our ability to self-heal. And so I told my wife, I said, sweetheart, I know you're scared and you're focused on this 20 to 30% survival rate, but here's my mindset. I choose to believe there's a 100% chance that I will be one of the 20 to 30% of those that survive this cancer, because I will do everything that they did and more. So I'm not this global statistic based on all people, including many that live in fear, that eat unhealthy food, that they're not supporting their body. I'm going to do everything that I possibly can to beat this. And so I believe there's a 100% chance, 100%. And that was the mindset. And my Miracle Morning changed in that it became about one objective. So the Miracle Morning is made up of these 6 practices that I know we're going to talk about. I will quickly run through them. They are the S.A.V.E.R.S acronym, S-A-V-E-R-S. The first S is for silence. That's your prayer, your meditation, your breath work. The A is for affirmations. Those are the statements that you repeat to yourself to shift your mindset. The V is visualization. That's actually closing your eyes and visualizing, creating almost like a dream of what you want to happen, as opposed to the nightmare that we often replay based on our fears. The E is for exercise, which is moving your body every morning to generate energy and mental clarity so that you feel better and you think clearer. The R is for reading, which is simply, if you want to improve any area of your life or achieve any goal, you want to make more money, you want to be happier, you want to be an author, you want to be an astronaut, whatever, there's a book, or probably dozens or hundreds written. And when you read those books, you shorten your learning curve so that you can get where you want to go that much faster by learning from people that have already been where you want to go. And the final S in S.A.V.E.R.S is for scribing, which is a fancy word for journaling, writing out things that you're grateful for, writing out things you're afraid of so you can get them out of your head and put them on paper and create separation, writing your most important things to do for the day so you can be as productive as possible. Those 6 practices, instead of them being on different things in my life that I wanted to accomplish, when I was diagnosed with cancer, all 6 of the S.A.V.E.R.S practices were focused on one objective: beating cancer. I meditated in a state of being healed. I created affirmations that focused on my healing. I visualized being healed. I exercised every morning. I read books on how to beat cancer naturally. I journaled the things I was committed to doing to beating cancer. I focused all 6 S.A.V.E.R.S on beating cancer. And within a couple of months, I was already in remission and on the road to recovery. And the doctors, once again, were blown away. And when I even look back to my car accident, even though I didn't know about the miracle morning, I was praying that I was going to be healed. I was visualizing that I was going to be healed. I was affirming to other people that I was going to walk again. So even though I didn't know the S.A.V.E.R.S, I was actually using at least half of them to heal from the car accident.
I became familiar with your work last summer when I read your updated and expanded edition, which I believe came out in December of 2023. I was wondering if maybe you would read the first 2 paragraphs of chapter 1 because they were the most impressionable for me. And after you read them, I want to explain to you immediately what my thoughts were after I read your first few.
I love it. Absolutely. Here we go. So this is chapter 1. It's time to wake up to your full potential. Why is it that when a baby is born, we often refer to them as the miracle of life and consider their potential to be limitless, but then we go on to accept mediocrity in our own lives? Where along the way do we lose sight of the miracle that we are living? When you were born, everyone assured you that you could have, be, and do anything you wanted when you grew up. So now that you're grown up, are you doing, having, and being anything and everything you've ever wanted? Or somewhere along the way, did you redefine anything and everything to include settling for less than you truly want and are capable of?
So those were the first words of chapter 1. I reread them many times. I've gone back and looked at it since. And I remember I read this at the pool. I can even tell you where I was sitting at the pool, what my children were doing in the pool, probably what I was wearing, like my cover up and everything like that.
Amazing.
I read it and my first thought was, am I being anything I want to be? Am I settling for mediocrity? Like, I'm 45 at the time, 46. Am I where I want to be in life? Would little Lori, who had all these dreams and aspirations, would I be who I thought I was going to be at that young age? And then immediately, my second thought was my children, who are 7 and 9 now. And I'm thinking, what example am I setting for them? And also, what do I want for them? And not just my children, but the students that I've led in my career and the students that I will be leading for different events and stuff. I don't want them to accept mediocrity. I don't want to accept it, and I don't want them to accept it. I want them to be curious, courageous, and confident. And reading those words of yours really, hit home. There was another quote of yours that I'll quickly read that really hit home with this word confidence. You said, the greatest gift we can give to people around us is to live to our full potential so that we give them permission and confidence and courage to live to their full potential. Through my work of making key changes, I pose questions for reflection and provide actionable key changes to grow. So after reading those first 2 paragraphs of chapter 1, I asked myself, how am I, or how are we making key changes to build confidence in ourselves? And how am I encouraging those I love, serve, and lead to also be confident in themselves? And most specifically, how are we doing that for our children? You have children, I have children, I work with lots of children. So I started in my home with my own children, and we started implementing some of the routines through S.A.V.E.R.S and some other methods. Just what does waking up in the morning look like? What do we do when we leave for school? What do we do when we come home? And I'm a pretty like routine person, but I realized I wasn't always demonstrating these routines to my children, and I wasn't always expecting them of my children. And, you know, that was a clear sign to me that I had to do better.
Yeah.
And then I brought this idea to my community in the form of a week-long camp so that I, along with some other remarkable leaders within our area in Maryland and beyond, can help children build confidence in themselves. And the goal is to expand globally with this camp eventually. So this summer, I'm launching the Confidence Camp. I'm so excited.
Love it.
It's a unique and supportive experience for children to build and maintain confidence in themselves and others. I want these kids to do anything they want to do. I want them to be anything they want to be and everything that they want to do. And I want to help them get there. So I had this idea to use your S.A.V.E.R.S method, the S.A.V.E.R.S practice at the camp at the beginning of each day. So the way we'll kick off the camp on the first day, of course, there'll be lots of, you know, great confetti and music and things happening. And then we'll have a welcome session. And then we'll talk about what confidence means to us. And then from there, we're going to immediately go into what are the S.A.V.E.R.S. And so for those that are not familiar, we mentioned this earlier, but the S.A.V.E.R.S is an acronym. And for any young children that aren't familiar with that word that are listening, an acronym is an abbreviation formed from the initial letters of other words that then builds a word. So like you used your 6 words, you then created the word S.A.V.E.R.S. And I remember reading in your book that you kept struggling, I think, with the last S for scribing.
Because it was journaling.
Yeah. And then maybe it was your wife who came up with, because she's brilliant, came up with the S. So I thought that was really neat that you used a synonym, another similar word, to come up with something that that you meant. So we talked about the S.A.V.E.R.S a little bit earlier, but right now, those are big words. You know, they're big words for anybody, but most importantly, they're big words for children. Visualization is a big word. I can't even say it. Visualization is a big word. Affirmations, those are big words. Scribing, that sort of thing. So if you could very briefly go through what they are, and then the best way that a child of any age, from a 9-year-old to a 13-year-old to a college student, could implement these.
Yeah. Absolutely. So silence, we'll start there. And that's the first S, of course, in S.A.V.E.R.S. Silence to me is the easiest one. I make a joke in the original Miracle Morning book where I say, you know, hey, so you literally get to start your Miracle Morning by doing nothing. You just sit there. You don't have to do anything. You just sit there in silence. It doesn't get much easier than that, right?
Well, you've obviously never taught middle school.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. You're right. But the point of it is, most of us don't start our day in silence. We start our day with stimulation, right? It's the wrong S to start our day with. Stimulation, where adults will grab their phone and start scrolling their phone, right? Now, kids might have a little more silence built into their life, but here's the purpose. Our best ideas come during periods of silence. It's also the best way to prepare ourselves for the day, to sit in silence, even if it's only for a minute or 2 or 5, it could be longer, but even a minute or 2 where you sit there and you just breathe, follow your breath. Now, there's different forms of silence. You could just breathe for a minute or 2 and just calm your nervous system, or you could pray. You know, if you pray to God, that can be your silence. You can pray, or you can meditate. Now, the meditation and the breathing are very similar. There's lots of forms of meditation. It's another big word, but basically to meditate is to sit in silence, to follow your breath, and to calm your mind and body. And then once you do that, you're prepared for the rest of your miracle morning and prepared for the rest of your day. Any questions on that, Lori?
No, I think you explained that really well. And the way that I was going to implement it at the camp was we were going to start with 30 seconds to a minute on the very first day. And, you know, that can be very difficult for any child, particularly when other children are around, because the giggles start, you know, somebody farts, you know, something happens in there. But then each day to add a little bit of time, 30 more seconds, 15 more seconds, so that by the end of the week, we're at a few minutes of sitting in silence.
I love that.
Then to ask them, what were things that you were thinking about, or what were you doing, or how did it make you feel? Like, I know if I'm sitting in a room with silence, I'm thinking, is my stomach growling? Like, my shoe makes a farting sound, something like that. So for children, that silence can be very scary for many reasons.
It makes a lot of sense. And I think that for, one of the simplest ways at the camp is to have their focus, not just say sit in silence, but it's, all right, so I want you to, all you're going to do is focus on your breath in through the nose, right? And you can do box breathing. That's actually a really great technique where you breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4. So you breathe in on the count of 4. You hold your breath for 4 seconds, and then you breathe out somewhat slowly on 4 seconds, and then you hold it out for 4 seconds. And so if you draw that box on in front of them where you go and you write 4 seconds, 4 seconds. And so they imagine literally breathing in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold out for 4. And that way their mind, before they know it, all of a sudden those 30 seconds go by in just 3 breaths, So
great. So briefly, we'll move on to A for affirmations. How could even an adult, but in this particular case, we're thinking about a child, how could they fulfill the affirmations?
So I'll define an affirmation. An affirmation, again, like you said, it's a big word. All it really means is anything that you say to yourself. Whatever you say to yourself is an affirmation. And that can be good or bad. If you say, I am capable of anything, that's a positive affirmation that's going to make you feel capable of anything. If you say, I'm so stupid, right? Or I never do a good job, or I always mess up, that's also an affirmation. So affirmations can be constructive and positive. We'll call those positive affirmations when you say, I am, followed by something that makes you feel good and confident. An I am statement is a simple way to think of the affirmation. It's I am blank, whatever you follow that with. And so you want to pay attention to what are you affirming to yourself without even realizing it. Like if someone says, I'm so stupid, they probably don't mean to say that. It's this unconscious affirmation they're saying. But here's what I want to get across. What you affirm, so what you say to yourself, what you affirm repeatedly becomes your inner reality. And so one of the most important things that we can do is to write our affirmations in front of us or print them out so we have a positive set of affirmations that say, I am confident, I am strong, I am smart, I am capable. And you read them every single day, because remember, what you affirm repeatedly, what you say to yourself repeatedly becomes your inner reality. So you want to have affirmations that make you feel smart and confident and capable.
Right. And I'll be providing examples to the children. But on a previous podcast episode of yours, I heard you were working with Jenny Wood, and she was like asking you to help her with her affirmations. And you reiterated to her that an affirmation is not a want or a desire. It's an I am statement. I am this, or I am that. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's you're affirming something that you are or something that you are committed to being. So I often will word it like, for example, if the affirmation is something like, let's say I don't have any money, but I want to have money. I can't say I am wealthy or I am rich if that's not true. I can say I am committed to earning more money, or I am committed to becoming wealthy or financially abundant, right? So the I am statement, it should be I am capable, or if it's something that you don't believe is true yet, add the word committed. I am committed to being this way.
And then V for I can't say it.
Visualization. So there's two aspects of visualization. One is visualizing what you want. The other part of visualization is visualizing what you need to do to move in the direction of what you want. So meaning like part one of visualization is seeing like a goal, something that you want in your life, but goals don't just happen magically. You have to work toward a goal. So for example, let's say somebody wants to run a marathon. A marathon is 26 miles. I don't think there's any human that could just go run 26 miles from the get-go. So you might visualize yourself crossing the finish line of a 26-mile marathon. That's what you want to do, but it might take you 6 months of running half a mile on day one, and then a mile on day two, and then a mile and a half on day three, right? You have to work your way up. So part one of visualizing is see that end goal, see that result you want so that it's exciting for you, but then spend, so 30 seconds visualizing the ideal result, the goal, what you want, but then visualize yourself doing the thing that will get you to that goal in the long run. And so for me, I call that part of visualization mental rehearsal. You're mentally rehearsing yourself going for that run or having that conversation that you're nervous to have. You're seeing yourself do the thing today that will move you closer to your ultimate vision that you see in the future.
Great. Thanks, Hal. And if it's okay, I'd love to take the next three and give examples of what we have planned for the camp. And you
Please, I'd love that.
So for exercise, E is for exercise, the fourth one. Again, we're going to do this in a short amount of time. So we're going to do some quick exercises like some jumping jacks, running in place, things like that. That would be great.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah, perfect. Jumping jacks is my favorite form of morning exercise. It gets the blood flowing. Good.
We'll scream your name as we're doing that. Sorry. The next one is reading. And so in addition to being inspired by the Miracle Morning, I was also inspired by the Confidence Code for Girls book, which was written by Katty Kay, Claire Shipman, and Jill Ellen Riley. And actually last week, just like you so graciously agreed to meet with me, Jill Ellen met with me last week. Awesome. And she provided me with some resources from a confidence conference that they had done many years ago. They had never created something like a camp, so she was able to share those with me. So we're going to be reading parts of that book, and then the campers are also going to be bringing some of their favorite books along too, and they'll have a short amount of time to read. And then finally, the last letter is scribing, which you talked about can be journaling or writing. So the Confidence Code for Girls also has an accompanying journal. So we're going to use some of those prompts and they're going to be journaling. But also, if I'm correct in saying that scribing can be about cultivating gratitude. So we're going to encourage the campers to also write thank you cards to family members and friends to infuse that gratitude practice into the morning as well. Would those all work well?
That's amazing. I love what you have planned. It's going to go fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks. And we got your approval, so that's great.
That's right.
I was asking my daughter, who's going to be at this particular camp, and some of her friends some questions. They didn't have a lot. But so then I started explaining a little bit more and talking. And my daughter, Harper, was like, can you ask Hal if he's ever missed a day of practicing the S.A.V.E.R.S? Now, earlier you mentioned that you do it 5 to 7 days a week, but had you started that you were doing it every single day? And when did you take days off, or when did you realize that it didn't need to be a part of your daily practice, or maybe it is every day?
It started at 5 days a week because we have been conditioned to think that that's how you do it. You take the weekends off. But what I realized is every day I did the Miracle Morning, Monday through Friday, I felt much more inspired and energized. And then when I slept in on Saturday, I'd wake up going, I feel like something's missing. It was the Miracle Morning. So eventually I went from 5 days a week to 6 days a week and then to 7 days a week. And so when I say 5 to 7 days a week, I do it 7 days a week is my target. But if my wife keeps me up late for like a date night or something, or, I rarely don't do it. I shoot for 7 days a week, and that's my preference because I always feel better when I do the Miracle Morning.
Quick questions here at the end. Is there one of the 6 practices that you like the most?
100%. Affirmations is my favorite because I get to write out exactly what I want to think and feel and believe. And then I get to read it and I get to feel all of those things. So affirmations is my favorite.
And your least favorite?
Visualization. I don't know why, but it doesn't come naturally to me. And so I close my eyes and I go, okay, yeah, I see it. I get it, whatever. But it's like, I'd rather be reading affirmations, reading a book, writing in my journal, exercising. I think visualization is the one that is too much like, I don't know. It's just, yeah, that one's my toughest.
She has two more questions for you. She wanted to know, what time do you actually wake up in the morning? She used the word, what time does he actually wake up?
So I wake up at 4:30 in the morning and I do my miracle morning from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. 7 days a week, again, unless I'm out late.
And when do you go to bed?
I go to bed I try to get into bed at 8 p.m. to start reading, because I also read for about 30 minutes in the evening. And I try to be asleep by 8:30 or 9 so I can get 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep.
Okay, to get up then at 4:30.
Yeah.
And then I don't know why she used this particular word. I imagine it was because we were watching the Miracle Morning movie in prepping for this interview, and my daughter was coming in and out and watching a little bit of it, and she was a little scared by some of the scenes with the car accident and that sort of thing. So she was like, all right, ask them what the scariest part of the S.A.V.E.R.S is. Okay. So is that the scary part to you?
I don't think there's any scary part, but what would come up for me is I think what scares people from trying it are limiting beliefs of, I've never done this before, right? We all have this fear of the unknown. That's what so the fear is like this illusion in our mind. But what if I don't do it right? What if I fail? Or the limiting belief of, I'm not a morning person. I've never been a morning person, so I don't know if this would work for me. And what I always tell people is, there are millions of people around the world that do the miracle morning, and most of them never thought they could do a morning routine. They never thought they could be a morning person. They had never done the S.A.V.E.R.S before, and now it's a part of their life. And so I always say, it's important to believe that if another person has done something, that's evidence of what's possible for all of us.
And the plan for this is, the reason why we're implementing this at the camp is so that the children have this model, this exemplar that they can use moving forward on their own. We're also having a caregiving parent session that's going to happen at the end of the camp, so parents can learn what we were teaching at the camp and they can implement these excellent behaviors in their living situations at home. So as an educator, I've worked in several schools, some where children have parents who are in jail, families who are homeless, or children whose parents or caregivers are workaholics and simply don't dedicate the time to their children like they should. In the Miracle Morning series, you have the book for teachers, you have the parents and families version, and you even have the college students. But what about the child who doesn't have the most dedicated teacher or caring family, or even a parent who is present? How can these children implement this routine on their own?
It's a great question. The couple ways. One is, so there is a Miracle Morning coloring book. It's called the Miracle Morning Art of Affirmations coloring book. And that is a great way for young people to have positive affirmations, to be able to color, which is also a form of meditation. When you color in silence, it's actually a form of you're focusing, you're concentrating not on your breath, but on the pencil or pen that you're coloring with. So there's space in that to write. So that alone, just that coloring book handles a few of the S.A.V.E.R.S in and of itself. And then you can exercise, you can read, those types of things. But I think that if you're a child, doing a 6-minute miracle morning would be the easiest way to start, where you go, okay, and you just remember, you write down S.A.V.E.R.S, okay? You write down silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. And then next to affirmations, maybe you write down one affirmation. If you have access to a computer, you can Google positive affirmations for kids. You can also go on YouTube. You can Google exercise for kids. You can Google meditation for kids on YouTube. So there, if you want to access the internet to get help, you can find all of the S.A.V.E.R.S resources online and specifically for kids. But my recommendation is just start simple. It's not about being perfect. It's about just getting started and making progress. And the last thing I'll say is that you don't have to do all 6 of the S.A.V.E.R.S for it to be a miracle morning. It only takes one S.A.V.E.R. If you start your day with silence, that's a miracle morning. If you started with affirmations, That's a miracle morning. If you start it with exercise, all you do is jumping jacks. Now you're starting with a miracle morning. So you can start with one of the savers and then add another and another and another and build your miracle morning slowly over time.
Awesome. So thank you for teaching us all about self-discipline. And the idea is teaching the children this summer at the camp and for future summers about self-discipline. As I come to my last question, I want to do another Hal Elrod quote because I think it segues really nicely into here. So you once wrote and said, "There is nothing to fear because you cannot fail. Only learn, grow, and become better than you've ever been before." You sound like a real true teacher there. Always remember that where you are is a result of who you were, but where you go depends entirely on who you choose to be from this moment on. So Hal Elrod, I ask you my final question, and that's, where are you going next, and who will you choose to be?
Oh, I love the question, Lori. I am going to continue focusing on being the best husband and father that I possibly can be. That's my number one priority. And when I'm not serving my family, serving humanity, it's sharing the miracle morning with as many people as I possibly can. So I'm so grateful that you give me this opportunity to share it with you and with the young people, the kids that you're going to have at your camp. And their parents and all of that, because my mission is to reach the other 8 billion people that don't know about the miracle morning yet, to help them wake up to their full potential.
Hal, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for dedicating your time and giving me this opportunity to interview you.
You're so welcome, Lori. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you haven't done so yet, please consider rating and reviewing the Making Key Changes podcast on the Apple Podcast app. If you found this episode helpful, please consider sharing it with others and joining me again next week. In my coming episodes, I'll discuss topics that are most passionate to me, along with things I've been researching or areas of my life I have changed or want to change. You can learn more about me on my website, makingkeychanges.com. Feel free to message me through there or reach out on social media. I'd love to hear from you and learn about what key changes you hope to make.